When my babies were young, I did say no to a lot of the opportunities because I had my partner and I let him take on the growth in the career so I could have the time to look after children and the family. But I was quite happy in that space until, as you've mentioned in my introduction, lost my husband, and it was a big shock. He was not unwell, he was not sick. It all happened within a span of 6 months. I wanted to show my children as well that, things can happen in your life. A lot of adversity can come your way. When you're hit by, a traumatic event, you can come out of it. You can learn from it. You can still grow from it. You can still continue on your pathway.
Hi, welcome to Take Beyond Gender podcast. I'm your host, Meena Satishkumar. Today, we are joined by Priya Mathur, a technologist and data leader who spent years in the engine room as a data analyst and a data engineer, and now serves as a head of enterprise data at Fidelity Life. Priya specializes in building data strategies that drive growth, efficiency, and excellence. Her journey is one of courage and purpose. After losing her husband to cancer 8 years ago, she completed an executive MBA with raising 2 young kids, becoming the role model she wanted them to see. Welcome to the podcast. Thanks for joining us, Priya.
Thank you, Meena. Thank you for that introduction. It's an honor to be part of this podcast. I'm really excited to share my journey with you and the viewers.
Thank you. So let's start from the beginning. Okay, so where did you grow up and what really sparked your interest in technology and data?
Sure thing. So I was born in India. I was raised there up until my secondary education when my parents migrated over to Zimbabwe. So my secondary education I've completed in Zimbabwe. I think it's the first taste of a different culture, having to fit into a different culture, just adjusting to new environment and new culture and new educational system. And so I think I've started my learning journey, my growth journey quite early on in my life. As I think, but that's where it actually I got introduced to technology, and IT was a new thing at the time. During when my secondary education was happening in Zimbabwe, there was a computer club at our school, which I enrolled into. So it's something that we had to sign up for, and we would get like an hour or two on the computer, and we would get some basic instructions on how to do some simple commands on the computer, etc. So yes, I would sign up every week, go and try to understand what this is. It was very different to the gaming computers we were using up until then. And some of our friends had said that they now purchase real computers at home, and it was a great excitement and discussion point on what it could do, what it could achieve, not really knowing at that age, what the future of IT and computers technology was. But that's definitely where I think it sparked my interest in IT. And I knew from that point forward that was an area I wanted to grow my career in. Um, at the end of my schooling, I decided to go back to India because IT was already booming in India. I come from Andhra Pradesh in India, and at the time there was cyber towers, what we call IT tech park, that was getting constructed in Hyderabad, which had become a bit of a hub for a lot of large IT and tech and computer companies. Seeing that growth and knowing that there was a lot more opportunity and a lot more learning I could do, I went back and I did my graduation and post-graduation in India. I graduated in bachelor's in computer science, and I went on to do master's in computer applications, preparing myself for the tech industry, trying to learn the tools as much as I could, then hands-on projects and into my career.
So that's a really beautiful journey. So now what was your first job like? Was it in data?
My first job was in data. So, well, actually, my first gig was straight out of uni, and I was ready to basically get into any job. It was a technical support analyst at GE, directly at GE, and I was doing a lot of support phone calls for overseas customers, password resets, and helping them connect their systems up, etc., and etc. And I knew in the back of my head that's not what I was made for. That's not what I've studied for. I've studied a lot more complex stuff. I've studied programming, and I was really hungry to get into a role I could get my teeth sunk into in a more complex sort of projects world, etc. Having done projects in that space as well as part of my studies, so I kept looking, and entry level positions opened up for a company called Satyam Computers back then, which is now bought up by Tech Mahindra. So yeah, so I made through a few rounds of interviews, and within 9 months, I was out of my first job into my proper entry level first software job. They grouped us into entry level cohorts and assigned specific projects and mentors to us at the time, which was great because the group that I was put into was data warehousing. And that was my introduction to proper data practice and my entry into the data world, real data world. So I would say I was fortunate to have been put into that because I kind of felt like I found my future there. It's where there was no looking back from that point.
Yeah. So why data as opposed to software development, for instance, or infrastructure? Was there any specific reason?
Yeah, I think I was lucky in that I've mentioned a few projects that I've done as part of my schooling, right? So I did network programming. So I was trying to my university project was trying to make two computers talk to each other. So I built some. I worked on a project that involved file transfer protocols and multimedia transfer protocols, so on and so forth. It was interesting enough, but it just did not give me the satisfaction. I worked on C. I think C programming and a little bit of Java, and trying to code front end web applications in other areas, and again it was interesting enough. But once I got the taste of data and what they were doing with the data, and because I was always curious and had this mindset, and I think it was the fact that we used Oracle at the time, and it was so English like. You're querying tables, and you're getting output, you're getting results. And I know that, or what I found, that the outcome of that was I could actually see like real value, the immediate value. It wasn't like four or five steps down from a particular product getting to the market. There was immediately value. It was used within our own decision making, not just let alone the clients, in what we were seeing and what we were surfacing for our clients. So I think that's basically why it's just the real tangible value that you can actually see from it.
Amazing. So, what triggered the move to New Zealand? So, you were working, that was your first job in Satyam. So, when did you move to New Zealand and what triggered the move?
My sister was already living here, so I had family living here at the time. They moved from Zimbabwe over to here, so I think that's basically why it sparked my interest when they came over to India. For my wedding, I looked at, that we spoke about it. I looked at, the photos. We talked about the opportunities. Better lifestyle really was one of the, I think, attractions for us in that, we were going to start a family, and we really wanted to raise them. And I mean, New Zealand is obviously, it's a wonderful country. The healthiness, the cleanliness, the naturalness of the country. So we're like, yeah, there was a no-brainer. We will move here. So that was basically why we have migrated across. we had we had family, and it was peaceful. I think that was the other reason as well, from a political perspective. So yeah, there was a lot of pull factors from New Zealand. It was it yeah, I think both me and my husband, we both had good careers going in India at the time, good tech careers, and we had great skill sets. So we applied in the skills needed in New Zealand category, and yeah, got selected out of that, got our residency through that, and we migrated across.
How was your early life working in tech in New Zealand? Which year was it?
That was in 2006, and I came with a 7-month-old baby. So I would say it was different experience for my husband and for me, because I was having to also deal with a small child and a baby. So to go to interviews, to work out where we drop him, where we who's going to mind him whilst we were navigating that search. I think it was a difficult period. There was a lot of opportunities in the data space, and applied for a few, and at the time made it to quite a lot of final rounds, but there was something or the other that happened in a couple of places, that the job either got cancelled or there was a different direction being taken by the company. So it took me a good close to 3 months to find something, for someone to give me that opportunity. I think it's one of those catch-22s, because they're looking for New Zealand experience,
Yeah.
um, which you don't have. How do you get it without actually getting into a role? So yeah, it was one of those situations as well with most of the interviews. But there was someone a consulting company called Indigo at the time, who was willing to take me on, understood me for what the skills that I had, and it was a data warehousing consulting role. So got in there, worked with a few clients, worked with Air New Zealand as part of that. Role. A few years later, they advertised for a permanent role for the same role that I was in, because they were obviously, they was being serviced by a consultant. And when the permanent role opened up, I thought it made sense with the young child that I had, to be in a bit more of a permanent role and a more stable role, which meant I had to give up on some of the other perks that came with consulting, but that was fine. So yeah, so I put my hand up, and then became a permanent employee with Air New Zealand. It was slightly easier. I wouldn't say easy, but slightly easier for my husband. He was in finance, and there was a lot more opportunity than tech. And he did have to, or we both had to take one step back, because we were actually into good roles in India. So we almost had to take one step back and build up from there, from seniority perspective.
Yeah, it's always a challenge, right? For migrants moving to a different country. It's like we either are overqualified, like you have a master's as well, right? Like, so when I finished my master's here in New Zealand, I struggled to find my first job because I was considered to be overqualified or underexperienced. It was this or the other. Finding a first place
That is
was a
so
challenge.
true. So true. Yeah, we went through all of that. We definitely went through all of that.
I want to go back to the topic of having a child and doing all of this as a migrant. So, did you have
Yeah.
family? Your sister was here, obviously.
Yes. Yeah.
Besides that, any other family support who would take care of kids while you went to work?
Um, my sister's extended family, so it was great to have their support when we first migrated across. We lived with them, but there obviously came a point when we had to do this on our own. So I think what I looked for at the time was home-based childcare. There was a childcare called Bernardo's, and it was being run by a local community lady, an Indian lady. So I think that's what we thought that would be a better transition for our baby, because then it's not too foreign for him to. It was home based, and what was happening at the home was closer to what we would like, how we would be at home. So yeah, it took us a while to we went through our extended families network and found this person and in the community, and I think that's where we got the most comfort that he was going to be looked after in a way that we would look after him, and not too much of a shock to his system, and eventually transition him to a proper kindergarten and daycare over time, because that I think it was needed for him to then step into the schooling space after that. The guilt, though, that kicks in was you're leaving a 7-month, 8-month-old baby every single day, and they're clinging on to you. The mom guilt and having to find a job and get into your career to secure your visa, but and then leaving a 8-month-old baby in someone else's care was a constant struggle. But yeah, thankful for, I think, the family support and community support that we got at the time.
So, how did your early experience in New Zealand and your early experience in your career shaped you to become a leader who you are today?
I think I'm a lot more understanding and empathetic of the struggles of migrants and women and parents, generally speaking. So when I'm hiring, or if I've got such team members within my team, and in through conversations, I think that's the first thing I try to understand, because there's always a work phase and then there's a personal side to every person. As a leader, that's probably one thing I do, is to try and connect at a personal level and understand everyone's story and what they're having to deal with, and enable that flexibility. I think COVID's brought in quite a good change in enabling, that remote working and flexibility, etc. Back when we migrated, we did not have that. If the you know if my children were sick, we between my husband and I, we would have to work out who would stay home, who would take that sick leave, which we didn't have much of, sometimes out of annual leave, etc. So I think it's helped in that we've now got a lot of that flexibility within organizations and corporates now. But as a leader, definitely, I think I bring that personal understanding with my team or with whoever I'm working with, really to get to understand them as a person and what they have got going in their life. So yeah, I would say that's probably the main thing. And
Hmm.
giving that opportunity to someone who's new to the country and hasn't had that New Zealand experience. But that's okay. What it's most of the data skills are transferable, so it's you can learn the experience as long as you've got the right mindset and potential.
Awesome. So, you were working hands on with data and then you transitioned to a leadership role. So, how was the transition and what triggered the transition?
I think it was mostly an organic evolution from having done a lot of data, and opportunities start coming your way when you're doing the right thing, when you're performing well. People recognize, and opportunities start coming your way. I did not, and I think when I chose to become hands off and move into leadership, is probably the points I can talk about, right? So I was it kind of depended. Like for me, it depended on where I was, what stage of life I was at. So when my babies were young, I did say no to a lot of the opportunities, because I had my partner as well with me, and I let him take on the growth and the career and the growth in the career. So I could have the time to look after the children and the family and the home. So I've kind of not really looked into that space at the time. Just did not want the risk of having to lead teams and get into that stressful environment. I just needed the space. So it was almost, we were like a balanced family. There was one person that could go and do that, and I could take care of other duties back home. um as the kids grew older, there was more time on hand, but there was I think I would say there were 2 points. When I moved to Auckland Council, I moved into more business focused roles and a little bit away from core technology. So I was more into business systems. I was more into financial systems. So it was more from looking at data, looking at technology from a different lens, and that opened up my eyes a little bit to um, there's actually you when you're in core data, when you're in core technology teams, your focus is how do I build this, how do I make something work, how do I do the integration, but you're not really thinking about the end goal. You're not really thinking about how is this going to shift the dial for the business and get that understanding. Whereas when you're in the business world, that's all you're thinking about. You're thinking about real problems. You're thinking about, a customer complaint or a customer request that has come through. In the world of Auckland Council, it would be in the form of a rates notice or property valuations or a consenting request, and you start from there. You start from there and you work backwards to the technology and data. So I think it's given me a different perspective altogether. And and while I was there, I was project managing quite a lot of projects in these areas, and well, my first taste of leadership, and that helped me understand again from a leadership perspective what you're actually, the difference you could make being in the role of a leader. But you're still kind of a little bit hands-on as a project leader, right? But I was quite happy in that space until as you've mentioned in my introduction, lost my husband, and it a big shock to our family. He was not unwell. He was not sick. It all happened within a span of 6 months. It was a bad back and a bit of cough, which turned, diagnosis turned into something that we did not expect. And within 6 months, I lost him, or we lost him. So I think that was the other turning point for me in that I had to take a step back and look at how do I now carry forward without this balancing factor in my life, without the mentor, someone I could turn to, talk to, ask for advice, or put all the heavy lifting on anymore. I had to do the heavy lifting. I had to run this vehicle forward. I had to be the mom and the dad for my young children still. Um, and I wanted, and I think it was a reflective moment for me, and I had to look at how I was going to do this and what I was going to compromise on or not so much on. And it was at that point I invested in myself. I studied executive MBA, tried to understand, because I knew the back of my head, my aspiration had always been to grow my career into leadership. So it was the time. I felt it was the time I wanted to show my children as well that things can happen in your life. A lot of adversity can come your way, but you don't have to give up on your dreams. You don't have to give up on your aspirations. You don't have to think when you're hit by a traumatic event. You can come out of it. You can still learn from it. You can still grow from it. You can still continue on your pathway, maybe a slightly different path in a new normal way, but you can still get to what you've always aspired to. So yeah, it was a lot of whiteboarding with myself, a lot of reflective time with myself. um, Worked out what I thought I needed. It wasn't always the right thing in most cases. It was, so it took me a bit of experimentation. But executive MBA really helped me with understanding, I think, the holistic organizational ways of working in real world scenario, equipped myself, I would say, and finally moved into leadership. I did struggle with letting go of a lot of hands-on, but I I know I can always get back to it if I needed to. But to being a leader and being authentic in that leadership role was more about developing your team, developing the people, leading them to an outcome. And I really started enjoying it. And once I got into my first leadership role, it was about what's next. What can I do more? How can I grow? How can I expand?
That's such an inspiring story, Priya. It's like uh, challenges as being a migrant and also such a huge, massive situation in your life, right? Like coming out of it, being strong for your kids, and also just pivoting your career to doing something quite different, and also doing an executive MBA on top of it. It's like, wow, that's just amazing.
It was not without support, right? So I was lucky, and I'll keep bringing this back to and this is why I've joined a few other committees that help women, right? Other women. But it was really the support of the family and the support of the community. I knew my parents migrated across, and they've started helping with looking after the kids. So I had to work out what that support network was, what within what sort of space could I operate in and do all of this. So I knew I had the setup for the kids to be looked after whilst I was focusing on self. I knew I had to grow the network, so I had to enter the network. I had to. A lot of it was put on the back burner while we were busy raising the family and busy raising and a different goal as a family back then. But I had to step into the community, step into my networks, tap into a lot of people that I wouldn't have otherwise spoken with. And having, like, I think having been there, talking to people, sharing my journey itself, and what my husband and I during those 6 months discussed was I could rely on all of this for a while. Um, I think it was the financial independence that was important, because that's the one thing I could not rely or take support from anybody else on. That it never plays out right. So I think that was the one thing that I had to make sure I had for myself and for the future of my children as well. So I think that would have probably been one of the, on top of the priority list. How do I maintain this financial independence, being on my own now as a single parent, trying to establish a new normal? But yeah, so I think it was not without all the support that I got from everybody, and my workplace as well that supported. I had lots of mentors during that time, or relied or tried to pick some mentors along the way. My brother-in-law, and also in tech, had been a big inspiring persona for me, and a few others at work that I basically organized some mentorship sessions on just soundboarding things, and if I was on the right path with what I was doing, sort of thing.
Awesome. So, what was your go to tool that you used whenever you felt down or when you felt like, okay, I need some words of encouragement now? What did you use? Like, was there any tool that you used or a technique?
I think it was less of tools and techniques. I actually kept myself quite busy with hobbies and fitness. I think that was my go-to. My go-to was going to the gym and doing a yoga session, or working out and trying to get healthy. And that was my thinking time, as well as I was doing something around fitness. Go for a walk. Found a group of friends that I could do walks with, etc. So I was going for a walk, just talking it out. And most often when you're talking things out, you find the answers yourself. But if I really needed motivation, encouragement, I think social media was picking up as well. But I used to do quite a lot of print reading, but now I just go on podcasts such as this, or there's sorry, it won't come to me when I'm trying to find it. Is it the Diary of the CEO? Stephen, yeah. So I think I try to listen to that podcast quite a bit. I try to listen to leaders podcasts and their struggles, just to give me that encouragement of, like, no one knows it, no one's figured it all out. Everyone's just gone into something and figured it out as they were on the journey. So it's not like, what I found with a few leaders was that they didn't know it all. They weren't all clued up, and they just had to take a chance, get into something, and figure it out. So that was encouraging, because sometimes as you're growing on your leadership journey, you do get that imposter syndrome. Am I fit? Am I right here? Am I at the right table? Do I fit into this crowd? Sort of lots of questions that come along, right? So I do, if I do need to, I try to listen to a lot of or read a lot online on people's journeys and leaders' journeys, political leaders. It could be CEOs of company or just women leaders, inspiring leaders.
So now, as a leader, what do you think you could possibly do when a colleague is going through a life crisis? Like, is there anything that a leader can do to make a difference in someone's life?
I think so. I think they can I think they can really make or break this person, because work is something that people's livelihood depends on. So I think it's really important to be empathetic. One thing I did not want at the time was sympathy. Like, I did not need that. It was empathy. So that's where the true difference comes, right? So it's knowing my situation, understanding my situation, and what the leadership team at council did really well for me, and I'm forever so grateful for that, was I did not have to for one day come in and do knowledge transfer. Whilst I was, I had to take time off to look after my husband. It was all done over the phone. It was all, they gave me all the flexibility I needed. They worked out with the HR on how much leave I had, what leave I could use, or how I could manage taking some good time out to for my husband's treatments, etc. So it was that level of support that that's just imprinted in my brain, and I knew if I ever had a colleague or a staff member going through this, or anyone for that matter, this is how I would react. This is how I would give back. Just that support and trying to work out, doing everything possible to make the work environment um, bearable for that person. It's giving them the space they need, but at the same time, not trying to separate them from the day-to-day working. So allowing them, I think it's a give and take. So allowing what within the company's limitations as well, what can you do for that person, and working out. So yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's what I try to do.
So I have two masters, double masters, and I always thought like I'm not doing anything related to my masters. And I often feel like probably I just wasted my time doing those masters. I could have might as well worked or invested that money doing something else.
Yeah.
Now you've recently completed, like since your husband's passing away, you completed an executive MBA. What is your perspective on having done that? How has that enriched your life?
Um, I think you're right in that, when you do masters straight out of college, you've done your bachelor's and you do your master's, you have less comprehension of what actually happens in the real world. So you're still being very theoretical, and you're still working on pseudo examples, or examples out of textbooks, which may not necessarily be what the real world needs, the skill sets. And it's very different, because education system and books were written a long time ago. I think IT in a way is fortunate, because there was a lot of industry projects at the time, so you had the opportunity to step into industry projects and learn a bit, but it still wasn't the same. But the difference in doing executive MBA or a second master's, but later in life, and because MBA is all about organizational elements, I could relate so much more, because I've now had the experience working with organizations, working in corporates, and knowing what I want to do, and having already been on the journey for a while. I could relate, I could grasp the concepts so much better, um, and also learn much quicker. without having to cram like I did during my school days. So that I remember during school days, it was all about just before the exam. But this was more, practical application, not no longer so much theory. I think the other good thing about the executive MBA is when you're a data person or a tech person, and that's what you're passionate about. My master's at the time was masters in computer applications. It was so focused on technology, so focused on applications of technology. Being in an MBA sort of degree, and that's why you have to pick and choose what you want to do, where your aspirations are. It gave me a wider appreciation of how organizations work and how all the wheels of the machine work, and they have to move together to actually run an organization successfully. So we did marketing papers, legal papers, we did governance papers, corporate governance papers, which has also triggered my interest in governance. So I am on volunteering on a couple of boards to gain on that, to use that learning, but also gain on that experience. But you kind of understand what you understand from an executive perspective who they're accountable to. You understand what stakeholders really means. Like for an organization, who are the shareholders, who are the stakeholders. You look at it, you look at an organizational elements differently. So I think I've definitely learned a lot from having done it later in life, and having picked a top, like a subject or a study that was actually useful for my career. Yeah.
So that's a different perspective, right? Even I've always like now at the moment I'm pursuing other education, but not necessarily a master's and not in tech either. And I do see a difference in the way you approach education, right? It's all about understanding and with life experience, you sort of apply anything that learn, and yeah, makes a huge difference.
Very different. Yeah, definitely 100%. It's also the educational systems are really different. When I
Yeah.
studied in India, it was quite different to how the studies were conducted here. It may not even be country to country difference. It might even be how much education has evolved over time. So, it's like um, close to 10-15 years between the two studies, and we were doing more group projects, and we were doing more and this is all like the targeted at leadership. So it was just being, I think the other benefit is learning from other leaders in the room as well. So yeah, yeah, you're absolutely right. You learn more about the you enhance your application skills.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you also mentioned a couple of times of being a part of a couple of boards, right? Tell us more
Mhm.
about your community work. How are you contributing back to society and your role in those boards?
Yeah, I feel like I've reached that stage in life where I want to give back a lot more. I've focused on growing my career, my goals, my ambitions, and you sometimes and there's a point a couple of years ago, and I'm sitting there, and after having done the MBA, after having gone into a few more leadership roles, how am I all this learning, all the skill sets, and like I've always wanted to give back for the support that I had, and I've shown, like I've proven myself that I can do things, but how am I making a difference for my companies, or like outside of my technical skill sets? How am I making a difference? What am I doing? How am I contributing back into the world, into the community? And that's when I decided to pursue the governance company governance side of things, because I've learned about it. So I've started applying for a few volunteer board roles, and at the time my brother-in-law was part of the industry advisory board at AUT, and he had an opening come up. So he suggested, and I told you he had a big influence on my career growth as well, suggested that. And it was such a beautiful opportunity, because you're giving back to the community, but you're actually giving back. This is the industry advisory board for AUT, right? So you're actually bringing what's going on in the industry to the student world, and you're actually
Mm.
shaping the future of the next generation um, a career, next generation enterprise or employees, you're able to shape some or basically influence what they would, should, or could be learning, which I thought was a beautiful way of giving back, all this knowledge. And I put my kids in that position. I like, this is, I help them, I guide them, but I'm actually able to do this on a larger scale. So I jumped at the opportunity, grabbed it with both my hands, and I'm now a volunteer committee member on that board. At the same time, I also got into being a board member of the West Auckland Budget Services, which is a, a community service that provides budgeting mentorship to community members. I think there's close to 600 people that walk through the doors, all stages of financial situations. And there's volunteer financial advisors who basically provide guidance around how they can be better at budgeting, be better at their financial management, and they use the local community centers and libraries to provide these services. So um, it's a great organization, making a huge difference with full of volunteering members, and that's this community that's come together, and being on the board there trying to help them, because to be able to run such an organization, it takes quite a lot of funding from different sources, and it's yeah, so around the board, we sit around the board and we talk about, well, what can we do differently? How can we ensure, with or without funding, but still continue this organization providing that invaluable service to the community, being part of the decision making. So it's a very recent role, and that's been great. The third one, again, very recently, and I think I've talked about how I've been going to community workshops, and this is Empower Community by Rani Nalam, and she's a great friend, and also really good community services member, and she has her own financial advisory as well. So I've attended a few of the events that were set up by Empower, which is Empower Her with the edge at the end, around women empowerment and women education sessions. And I've related to, and she invited me as a guest on one of them to talk about my financial independence and how I've done it, as well, over the last few years, because I was not my focus for a very long time, and I had to quickly skill up on that basis. So I did share my journey with the committee there, and I attended a few more, and it really sparked my interest, and I thought that would be another beautiful way of giving back. All this that I've gathered over the years, and had in my brain. I thought, it's a great opportunity to actually share it with our wider community in a different way. And Rani asked if I could be part of the committee, so I have signed up. And what we're doing as part of that is curating um, more, what do the women of today need, what do the women migrants need, so try and tailor educational sessions. So we're taking quite a lot of feedback from those who are attending the sessions, and as a committee, we're coming up with newer, better, and more impactful ways of helping and empowering our women community.
Wow, you're a busy woman. How are you managing with kids, job, and being a member of multiple boards and doing all this community work?
Yeah, I think when you have a passion for something, I feel like you make the time anyway. You don't feel it as a burden or a stress. So if you're passionate about something, it's time is, I feel it's fixed for everybody. There's only 24 hours in a day. What you make of the 24 hours is entirely up to you. And if you're doing something that you enjoy, if you're doing something you're passionate about, and you feel like you're achieving that, then I think it's yeah, the time just comes. It happens in the 24 hours. Sometimes I feel I work 48, but I don't feel the stress of it.
Oh, nice. Awesome. So
Yeah.
now, Now, looking back at your life, right, starting from being a student in computer science and then with your first job and migrating and stuff. Now, looking back at yourself as a younger self starting a career back in India, what advice would you give to yourself?
I think I would probably, back then I was, full of dreams and full of aspirations and just wanting to learn and wanting to get in there and um, be really, stuck into things without actually understanding the why. Like why, what are we doing this for? Yeah, I'm part of a team, but what's the team there for? Like, how does this connect to? So I think being here now and knowing that companies usually have priorities, have vision, have strategy, and there's a direction they want to take, and that connection is so important that if for you to get that satisfaction of you've added value as a person to an organization, then you need to know how you fit into the bigger picture. And I think that's one thing I would have done. Like I would tell my younger self is, if when you join a company, try to understand how you fit. Because I joined Satyam Computers, and I knew we had a project going with some clients overseas, and I did not understand how the organization was structured. I didn't care enough at the time. It was just about my team, my scope, my what I needed to learn, and what the immediate next step was, rather than the bigger picture. So I think that's what I would encourage youngsters to try when they get in there, to try and quickly learn what this organization's about, if not before. Joining a company, try to understand what they're doing, how they are, why are they there, and what are the priorities, and how do they want to. It's important to choose companies that align with your values as well, because do you really want to work with, say, I don't know, a gambling company, which may or may not be right thing for you, but does it align with your values, for
Hmm.
example? Yeah, making choices.
So now you're working as a head of enterprise data. Obviously, so much is changing in the data space now. What excites you in the future of data?
I think the introduction of AI is definitely exciting me. I mean, AI has been there traditionally speaking. Machine learning and models and AI creation has always been there, but this introduction of Gen AI, I feel like it's while some people still like to call it a hype cycle, I think there is true value and true it's growing at a scale that I feel like you like, and I feel like we don't even know what's coming. Like there's still more to come in that space. So that's what exciting me. And I think the fact that all of that will fail if there's no good data and good data governance practices, right? So you can take any innovation only to a certain point, because they have to spit out an answer on the other end, and that only happens if you're feeding it good data and good metadata to it. So I think this is what's exciting me, and also how we can gain more efficiencies, because there's some practices within data that are quite onerous on like our engineers or our data modelers or our architects and our data analysts, and like which of these within the data landscape can AI assist with. So I think that's what's exciting me.
So, what are the risks associated with? Do you think, like, I know there are many organizations who are still like hesitant to try
Yeah.
because of all the risk that comes with it.
Yeah.
How do you see it that way? What do you think about AI, implementing AI within an organization? What should the risk appetite be?
I think it's different for different organizations. I'm working in an insurance industry, heavily regulated, comes under a lot of scrutiny. The risk appetite levels are really low, so they're not willing to take too much risk or open ourselves up to too much risk. So we have to have strict guidelines and controls and policies in place. I think it's prudent for any organization to do so, because especially if you're dealing with customer data, you want to make sure that you're doing the right thing by the customer and by the organization as well. So there's definitely risk with the introduction of any new technology or process. I think the best way to deal with it is to have I put some guardrails in. Um, if you can, using technology, restrict certain things, by all means. But there will be experimentation that you can't stop, especially with AI, because there's just, like the LLMs are just so easily available everywhere. So I think it's important education. It's important to put those guardrails. It's important to keep at it and putting some good governance practices in place, so you're not blowing up your risk, but you're managing it well and with some good controls.
So, what would be your advice to a data analyst or a data engineer who wants to step into leadership roles?
I think for me, it comes back to that bigger picture thinking. Um, Always start from the end. So, as I mentioned before, when I was an engineer, for me, it was all about the code. It was all about the scope was, like, how do I get, someone's given me an instruction to write, to do something. I wanted to just do the best job at it, have the best optimal code and, the best outcome and, like really polished version of it, without knowing what it was actually solving for, or how it impacted. If I worked on this for 6 months making the best code, is that acceptable? If I pushed something that was not quality tested, is that acceptable? Like that was, it was all about me and what my immediate team leader wanted. I would say for current data engineers, data analysts, don't be so much, it's important, but don't be so much behind the screen. When a problem statement comes your way, try to understand the why, try to understand, well, and that helps you step into that leadership role, right? Because once you start asking the questions, you're meeting with your stakeholders, you're talking, you're all of a sudden communicating your visibility. So for leaders, that matters. What matters is that communication, that level of visibility and connecting the dots. Being curious is another, like, just try to understand where the organization's heading. It's so easy to just be behind the computer and pump out that report and pump out that dashboard and just build that piece of code. But once you step out and make some room, make some time for understanding the wider organization, and then offer data where you hear. So don't go with the data agenda, just listen first and then offer it where you find that opportunity, offer data solutions. I think that will help shape that leadership pathway for them.
So,
Yeah.
what is your next step? What are your career goals or future aspirations?
Yeah. I think for me, it's about, I want to, like, there's still, as a leader, you never stop learning. Right? I think learning is one thing that no one should ever stop doing. Um, I'm in the head of enterprise data, and I've been in this role for close to a year now. And I want to learn, I think, a lot more within the space that I'm in before thinking about, that next step. My future aspiration is obviously grow into, vertically into the data leadership roles. If, or maybe even more generic leadership roles, right? So I haven't worked that out quite yet on where I want to be, say, in 3 to 5 years down the lane. But right now, I've still got quite a lot to grow and learn into. And should an opportunity come my way, that will then help me get into that next step, and that could be, I don't know, looking after a wider, a wider team, etc. I probably will consider what that looks like for me at this stage. But I think for me right now is about, let me excel in the role, because if I feel like there's still room for improvement, that means I haven't fulfilled, I haven't fully done my roles. The moment I feel that, though, I know it's time for that next role. Because then, if there's no room for growth, no room for improvement, that means you're at the top of that. I feel like, you've saturated what you can learn from and it's a balance. So for me it's that, and for me it's also about latching on to what's going on in globally and across other organizations as well, on how you take or how you mature the current function. So um, role or not, the title aside, how do I mature the data function? So that's something I would love to make that step change from where we currently at. Um, and I think with the governance roles, I'm quite happy with the volunteering side of things that or the organizations I'm currently servicing. So helping them get to a certain stage. When I feel like I've contributed enough, I'll probably look out for more opportunities. But right now, I feel like there's a good balance of what I'm doing, a good mix, which is helping me progress to that next stage.
Really beautiful. Thank you so much for your time, Priya. It was so inspiring to listen to you, listen to your story as coming in as a data analyst, engineer, starting your career here from sort of ground up, right? As a migrant, and now seeing you as a head of enterprise data is really, truly inspiring. Are there any final thoughts of advice to our listeners?
Final words of advice would be, don't feel like you don't belong at a table, because I think that's one thing you go through as a migrant. That's one thing you go through as a woman. That's one thing you go through if you've come from a cultural background that's not necessarily puts you into a leading position. So if your aspiration is to be a leader, don't get that imposter syndrome take over. You will find that most people around that table that that you always aspire to be around um, have doesn't have it all figured out themselves. So just go in there, be open, listen, be curious, and eventually you definitely. So if it's where you want to be, it's where you will get, and you can do it.
Great.
Just take it
Thank
on.
you so
Yeah.
much for your time, Priya. It was very beautiful to listen to your story and have you with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Meena. Appreciate it. And thank you for the time. It was a wonderful opportunity to be able to share my journey.